At the E3 gaming convention in 2012, LucasArts announced a game now infamous among Star Wars fans, Star Wars 1313. This was to be an entirely new direction for Star Wars gaming. The game was to focus on the criminal underworld of the Star Wars universe. Up until this time, Star Wars games either focused on large-scale wars or the Force-wielding Jedi and Sith. 1313 is named for a specific level on the capital planet of Coruscant, notorious for crime. The setting was picked to appeal to a more mature gamer. The story and gameplay were geared to create an immersive experience for players, choosing a relatively unmined vein in the Star Wars expanded universe at the time, so the creators of the game had more room to stretch their legs and tell a fresh story. Fan and critical response to the game's announcement were incredibly positive. The new direction for Star Wars storytelling and gaming had fans excited. Remember, at this time, there was no talk about any movies beyond Lucas's 6, and aside from the Clone Wars, we weren't looking at an ever-expanding lineup of shows. Books and comics were still running strong, and were still called the Expanded Universe rather than Legends. Also at this time, more mature storytelling in games was going a long way on keeping older gamers hooked. Uncharted had a few entries at this time of the announcement, and The Last of Us was already highly anticipated and soon to be released. Initially, the protagonist was supposed to be something of a blank canvas bounty hunter. As development progressed, Boba Fett, early in his bounty hunting career, took over as the playable hero. I actually like the angle of a blank bounty hunter better. No offense to Boba Fett, love Boba Fett, but an elaborate character creation menu and choices made along the way would allow players to really become immersed, shaping their own bounty hunter. I think of this like Bethesda's best games, like the Fallout series and Skyrim. That being said, who doesn't love Boba Fett? The Boba Fett change was supposedly proposed by George Lucas himself. He thought it would add a new layer of engagement for fans and would tie in the new, darker tone with existing Star Wars lore. Can't really fault that logic. The story's main thrust would explore the intricacies of the galaxy's criminal underworld. This area was present in the primary Star Wars movies, but to a very small degree. It was explored a bit more in the expanded universe, but this was supposed to be a truly deep dive. Many systems and ideas proposed for this game would be taken for the recently released Star Wars Outlaws, but from all reports, that game is falling short of players' expectations. Along with the dark tone being new, the choice to purposely exclude Force-sensitive characters was made in an effort to ground the game with a realistic feel while still delivering on all of the space fantasy fans love about the Star Wars universe. The amazing concept art that was released showed a noir-type atmosphere, complete with neon lighting, grimy alleyways, and more behind-the-scenes type areas not often showcased in the films. Taking some cues from the widely popular Uncharted franchise, 1313 was to be a third-person shooter with a parkour-style movement system. The cityscapes and narrow alleyways would let the players interact with the environment, similar to the equally popular Assassin's Creed and Tomb Raider franchises. The gameplay would blend action and adventure along with the gritty narration. One cool aspect of switching the protagonist to be a young Boba Fett is that players would be open to his full arsenal of blasters, gadgets, and close-quarter combat moves. With the parkour-type traversal system, I wonder how the jetpack would be utilized or kept in check, so climbing and jumping was still part of the gameplay. The combat wouldn't be overly reliant on the near impenetrable armor of the Mandalorians. It was said to be cover-based, where run-and-gun spamming wouldn't lead to success. Players would have to be more tactical, which would help the game feel grounded and the stakes more dire in combat situations. There was even early gameplay footage released highlighting fast-paced shootouts, chase sequences, and cinematic combat. As with everything George Lucas likes to get his hands in, 1313 wasn't just going to be a cool game. It was supposed to push the boundaries of video game technology of the time. LucasArts worked with their sister company, Industrial Light and Magic, the powerhouse special effects crew behind the Star Wars movies and obviously countless other amazing projects. The development team used state-of-the-art motion capture technology and high-quality facial animation to create graphics so realistic there was little to no difference between the gameplay and the cinematic cutscenes. The movie-like experience of the visuals would have made the game that much more immersive. Along with making the characters as realistic as possible, LucasArts was implementing dynamic lighting, ray tracing, and the most advanced physics engines available to increase the realism. They made advancements in real-time rendering so the environments were as realistic as the characters in them. The density of detail and effects were uncommon for other video games being developed at the time, which set an incredibly high bar. Journalists in the gaming realm, along with industry professionals who got a deeper inside look than the public, were blown away by the detail and smoothness. They praised LucasArts for pushing boundaries, not just in game development, but in what the Star Wars IP could be. George Lucas's idea to turn the blank slate bounty hunter into Boba Fett was done a bit of the way into development. This required the devs to make significant changes to key narrative aspects of the game as to not break Boba Fett's established lore. The writers found this to be a bit of a challenge. The new corner of the Star Wars galaxy that was 1313 was supposed to give them a chance to create something fresh and put their own stamp on things, including a fan-favorite legacy character, restrain some of that as they could not change Fett's lore. The goal of the story was to deepen players' connection to Boba Fett and would also have deepened Fett's own canon as well. To further complicate things, the game was in development during the Disney buyout. LucasArts tried to juggle the existing vision of the game while meeting Disney's standards and new creative vision for the franchise. As the buyout happened, fans who had been following the game's progress tried to hold on to hope, but it didn't take long for things to change. LucasArts was part of the Lucasfilm purchase deal. In April 2013, mere months after the acquisition, Disney announced that all LucasArts projects would be put on pause. They had no interest in in-house game development and opted to license the IP out instead. The game was officially put on hold, but the writing was on the wall. Star Wars 1313 was dead. Many LucasArts employees lost their jobs. Fans were understandably upset by this move, not just for the loss of the game that was showing so much promise, but the future implication that more experimental games of this nature would not exist in lieu of games safer in the shareholders' minds. There have been some great games since this decision, the Jedi Fallen Order games as an example, but it's a shame so much work got kicked to the curb. As time passed, bits of what might have been have come out, usually as leaks. Gameplay footage and story details clued already disappointed fans into what seems to have been a very promising title. Fett's character model, environments, and even fully realized combat sequences have seen the light of day. The game looked great, not to mention ambitious. Due to the quality of the work that was done and the ever-present itch that can't be scratched of what might have been, 1313 has left a mark on the fandom and gaming communities. Fan petitions and campaigns to bring the game back into development circulated around the internet for a while, but of course, they had no impact on Disney's ultimate decision to cancel it. Some of the ideas and tone established in 1313 would be recycled into future Star Wars projects, Star Wars Outlaws being very recent to the time of this write-up, and shows like The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett would have a Mandalorian lead and deal heavily in the underground crime world of Star Wars Galaxy. The Mandalorian especially grounded its storytelling and told a grittier version, especially in the first season. There have been a number of on-again, off-again rumors that the game was to be revived, continued, remade, or recycled, but from what I can find, none of those rumors have come close to being from a truly credible source or official in any capacity. The previously mentioned Jedi Fallen Order game was the first game under Disney's reign to really hit big with fans. This game didn't take much of anything from 1313 as far as I can tell, and the gameplay is slightly different than what 1313 was promising. But it's a great game with a killer sequel, so if you haven't played those, get on it. In 2021, Lucasfilm Games was revealed as something of an in-house gaming company rebrand. Fans, once again, started buzzing about 1313 being resurrected, but a few years later, 1313 is still a sad thought of what might have been. The game was so buzzed about, it's iconic even though it never resembled the final product. It's likely that the game, though it never came out, still influences the future of some Star Wars stories. The incredible interest and support may have shaped many stories that have been told of the criminal underworld in Star Wars since. If you want to dive deeper on any aspects of what was covered here, check out popular gaming sites like IGN, Kotaku, GameSpot, and Polygon for their coverage of Star Wars 1313 circa 2012 and 2013. There's also preview articles and event coverage of the E3 announcement. The Verge and Wired hosted interviews with many involved in the game's development, especially those laid off after the Disney buyout. Star Wars fan sites, Making Star Wars, and Star Wars Newsnet have great archives of the leaked materials. Check out this video next for more on the Star Wars universe.